Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about practicing your speech. This is important because you want to make sure you know what you are going to say, how you will say it, and what you will do if you have to suddenly change your speech right before you deliver your speech or as you deliver it. It might seem easy to believe that every confident person we see giving a speech is just winging it and they do not need to practice. But unless it is explicit that the person speaking is speaking on the spot with no prepared speech beforehand, it is more likely than not every person giving their speech had to do some preparation beforehand. It could have been days, weeks, or months of preparation, not just to research and write their speech, but also to prepare and practice it in their head and out loud. The truth is that no good speaker or debater tries to make it up as they go along. There are, of course, moments where you need to improvise or be spontaneous, but according to communications consultant Somers White, he said, quote, 90% of how well the talk will go is determined before the speaker steps on the platform, unquote. To succeed, you need to be prepared to talk about the topic at hand, and you also need to have practice talking about it. You want it to seem natural, which requires a great deal of work, but it is okay since we will talk about how to do this. All you have to do is practice as much as you can. Let's take a look at two orators of the past 100 years. Winston Churchill's Fight on the Beaches speech and Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Believe it or not, both of them had to do serious work to become the orators we now know them to be. These examples can help you understand the importance of practicing your speech. Let's start with Winston Churchill. As a child, he had a stutter and a stammer. He often spoke with a lisp, and he was shy. Even by the time he had entered politics in his 20s, he still had issues with his speech. In 1904, at age 29, Churchill stood in the House of Commons to deliver a speech. It began well, full of bombast and energy, and he went along without the aid of notes, speaking purely from memory. But as he reached the climax of his address, writes one of his biographers, he suddenly lost his way. Quote, and it rests with those who, unquote, he started to say, but then stopped mid-sentence. He tried again, quote, it rests with those who, unquote, and yet again his voice trailed off. Note the writers Breed and Kate McKay. For 3 entire minutes, 3 minutes that must have felt like an eternity for the young Churchill, he tried to find the right words, but couldn't. The Commons chamber began to heckle him, say the McKays. Quote, I thank the House for having listened to me, unquote. He said, red-faced, as he sat down and put his head in his hands. Yet come 1940, that same Churchill would rally millions of Britons with talk of, quote, blood, toil, tears, and sweat, unquote, and the need to fight Nazis on the beaches. He was in no danger of losing his train of thought then. And in 1963, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, quote, for his mastery of historical and biographical description, as well as for brilliant oratory, emphasis added, unquote. How did Churchill become a brilliant and award-winning, nation-inspired orator? Through practice and preparation. One of his many biographers, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, says Churchill's speeches, quote, were a triumph of effort and preparation, in which phrases were revised and licked into shape as a she-bear licks her cubs, unquote. Churchill himself resolved never again to behave like those orators who, quote, before they get up, do not know where they are going to say, what they're going to say, when they are speaking, do not know what they are saying, and when they have sat down, do not know what they have said, unquote. As Johnson writes, referring to the 1904 incident in Parliament, quote, he never made that mistake again. He kept his sheriff of typewritten notes pinned together and had no shame in peering down at them through his black-born rims. Churchill's speeches were Syrian in their essentially literary nature. They were declamations of text, unquote. Churchill wrote out his speeches in full. He would even write out every planned pause, but he did not read them out. In fact, as another of his biographers, William Manchester, has pointed out, Churchill put so much time into rehearsing his speeches that when he did deliver them, he took only the odd glance at his notes. And what about his stutter and lisp? While walking around outdoors, Churchill would try to tackle his issue with words that started with the letter S by repeating ridiculous sentences out loud, such as, quote, "The Spanish ships I cannot set since they are not in sight," unquote. Later, he would proudly declare, quote, "My impediment is no hindrance," unquote. He would also practice his speeches wherever and whenever he could. His valet, Norman McGowan, tells the story of how he once heard his boss murmuring in the bathtub. McGowan called out, quote, "Do you want me?" And Churchill replied, "I wasn't talking to you. I was addressing the House of Commons," unquote. So you can tell that Churchill was practicing his speech anywhere and everywhere he could. That was what it took for him to be the orator that he was. Let's proceed to Martin Luther King Jr. MLK Jr. may have been a fourth-generation Baptist preacher with a flair for improvisation that Churchill lacked, but it would be a mistake to assume that his political speeches, in particular, came naturally or spontaneously to him, or that he didn't spend hours and hours planning and writing them. According to Stacy Zowal Costello, who served as assistant editor at the King Papers Project at Stanford University's Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute, she said, quote, "I think one of the misconceptions people have about King was that all of his material was spontaneous and did not repeat. However, the opposite is true. He spent a lot of time preparing his speeches and often recycled material, using it in different places and ways in order to get his point across," unquote. According to author and executive coach Scott Eblin, he said, quote, "It's well known that King delivered most of the I Have a Dream speech without any notes and that he improvised much of it on the spot. What's not as well known is that he had been working with so much of the content of that speech in other addresses he gave months and years before the March on Washington. He took the time and opportunity to get very comfortable with his content and experimented with what worked and didn't work in venues that weren't as prominent as the National Mall, unquote. MLK Jr. put the hours in. Yet even so, the night before he delivered his most famous speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to over 250,000 people, King was reportedly awake until 4:00 a.m., writing and rewriting it. Think about it. We consider MLK Jr. as a great historical orator, but he still wanted to work on his oratorical skills by practicing and preparing his speech. He wanted to make sure the style, content, tone, delivery, and everything else was good for him. I bring these examples up to again show you that even the best public speakers we know in history and currently need to make sure that their speeches are good to them. Churchill and MLK Jr. did not suddenly give their speeches. They spent time preparing for them because they understood they wanted to give the best versions of them. They wanted to get the right words, the right tone, and the right emphasis. And it paid off because we keep going back to these speeches when we talk about history. That's because we consider them significant in history and delivering powerful messages. So if they set high standards for themselves for public speaking, we can do so too. So how should you practice and prepare for public speaking? It is best to start with the basis of public performance by seeing how you look, how you sound, and how you time each moment of your speech. Each of these elements will benefit from feeling confidence and calm. They will also need to be combined with substance and research, but confidence and knowledge are not enough on their own. You need a certain stage presence that can capture and maintain your audience's attention. If your voice, gestures, and body language are not matching your words, your audience will have a hard time believing your message. With this in mind, here are some ways to practice and prepare your speech delivery. 1, practice how you look. You could stand in front of a mirror to see how you look and how you come across as you speak in front of your own reflection. Examine your posture and make sure you're not slouching, swaying, or bobbling when you speak. Check your facial expressions too. What look do you have on your face when you are speaking? How expressive is it? And is it the correct expression deployed at the correct time? Does it match what you're saying, or are you smiling while delivering the bad news and frowning while delivering the good news? You can record yourself giving your speech. Afterward, you can see and hear what others see and hear when you speak to them. If you want, you can consider watching your video without the volume so you can concentrate solely on your facial expressions and body language and see if they are helping or hindering your delivery. Simply seeing yourself in action makes you more conscious of how you come across, which makes you better equipped to eliminate useless movements and gestures. 2, practice how you sound. This is where you need to make yourself aware of how your voice sounds and comes across to others, as well as if you are aware of how it changes when you are giving a speech to a crowd. There are 4 basic aspects to vocal delivery, says speech coach Helen von Dazelzen, known as the 4 Ps: pitch, power, pace, and pause. Pitch is your tone of voice. Power is how loudly or quietly you speak. Pace is how fast or slow you speak, and pauses are the breaks you have between sentences or declamations. The 4 Ps require polishing and perfecting, and here, again, a smartphone is going to be useful here. First, you need to record yourself speaking and listen to your volume. Do you sound like you're shouting? Do you sound too quiet? Or do you believe you are at the right volume? It is critical to make sure people can hear you, but at the same time, it is important to sound relaxed and easy to listen to. You may want to vary your volume depending on whether you are trying to project joy and humor or sadness and fear. You will also want to get louder or quieter depending on where you are in your speech, so you can emphasize specific points. Likewise, your dynamics should change depending on where you are physically. Are you in a small, medium, or large room? The power of your voice should change to reflect the setting, and, if possible, you should practice in the right setting. This means that when you record yourself, try to place your phone wherever your target listener is going to be. If you're going to be addressing a large conference room, record from the far end of the room rather than 5 inches from your face. Next, listen to how you are speaking. As poet and author Maya Angelou observed, quote, "Words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with deeper meaning," unquote. In practical terms, this means one thing. If you speak in a robotic, monotonous tone of voice, you will put your audience to sleep. There is nothing more off-putting in a public speaker than a flat or dull tone. This is where pitch and pause come into play. What words are you emphasizing and in what way? What tone are you using, and are you varying it from sentence to sentence? Are you pausing at the right spots for dramatic or even comedic effect? A strategic pause can give you a chance to take a breath and your audience a chance to digest what you have just told them. However, be careful of what are known as vocalized pauses, those useless filler words between sentences like, etc. Sometimes we know we're saying it, sometimes we don't. It's like a conscious and unconscious process. But these verbal tics can be highly off-putting for an audience. So the first thing to do if you want to stop using filler words from your speech is to be conscious that you are relying on them. Pay close attention to how you enunciate words too, and whether or not you are mumbling. Also, for your speed, make sure you know when it is best to speed up and slow down. You could speed up to generate excitement among your listeners on a specific point, and you could slow down to ensure they are following and processing the argument you are making. Every good orator learns how to alternate between the two. Doing so not only helps listeners absorb your points, but it also keeps the act of listening more interesting and engaging. Still, you will need to practice much more on consciously slowing yourself down rather than on speeding up. This is common in first-time speakers and is often hard to notice. You are full of adrenaline and eager to get your points across, so all of a sudden you sound pretty fast. By recording yourself speaking, you will be able to hear how others hear you. The 4 Ps can require a great deal of practice, especially if you are not used to speaking in public. So take your time understanding this method to ensure you can effectively use it in your speeches. 3, practice your timing. When you are in a formalized setting, you are almost always given a time slot, a clock, or scheduled period to talk, and you need to be able to stick to it. Not just because you want to avoid breaking any rules, but also because you want to avoid annoying other people in the setting. So you need to time yourself speaking. Do it again and again until you can deliver your argument in the specified time you are given. The benefits are not just about sticking to a schedule. Working on your timing beforehand ensures that your speech or presentation is well timed. It also makes you less likely to ramble. No one wants to hear you meander through a 20-minute story that you could have told in 2 minutes. Plus, you do not want to get cut off for going over your time. When you get the timing right, you could have a chance to make your changes to one piece of your speech without ruining your overall delivery and timing. You should only do this if you are already super familiar with your structure and content inside and out. Still, it is best to prepare your remarks that go under your time limit. For example, if you are given 10 minutes to speak, try preparing only 8 or 9 minutes of remarks. This gives you wiggle room if you feel the need to include any extra points or arguments on the day of. If you don't need to, it is not a problem. Everyone will respect your ability to be concise rather than droning on. Here are some other ways to make your speech sticks to time. You can write out your speech in full, then time yourself giving it, and then memorize the entire thing. If you memorize your speech, you should have a copy of your speech within arm's reach, just in case. Write out your speech in full, time yourself giving it, and then deliver it with written remarks on the podium or lectern in front of you. But do not read it out to your audience with your head down, buried in the text. Or instead of writing out your speech in full, you can also deliver your remarks in note form. Use cue cards with bullet points on them, including only key words and phrases instead of full sentences or paragraphs. The advantage of this approach is that you do not need to worry about forgetting your speech or having to read your speech word for word. This gives you flexibility where if you are running out of time, you can make sure to still get your most important points across. You could try each method out and pick which works for you. But the key to succeeding with all of these methods is rehearsal. Find an audience of friends or colleagues to practice in front of. Be willing to accept feedback, even criticism. Then tweak and retweak your remarks until they are just right, properly timed, but also natural to you in a way that allows you to speak smoothly. Practicing in front of friends means you can lean into a conversational style and tone. Lastly, you might wonder how much you need to practice. It depends on what you will be talking about and how long your speech will be. It all boils down to when you feel completely ready to give your speech. You could be ready in a day, a couple of days, a week, or more. So it is hard to say how much is the right amount of time to practice because it all depends on your commitment to ensuring your speech succeeds. In conclusion, the more you practice, the more prepared you are to give the best speech you can. Spend as much time as you need to practice your speech and ensure your delivery is sharp, based on your look, your sound, and your timing. All in all, you can never be too prepared. In the next video, we will talk about doing enough research for your speech. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.